Kurt first noticed the blue Honda Civic during the third song of the set. It wasn't unusual to see cars in the venue parking lot. People always parked nearby and walked over. But this car was different. While every other vehicle sat empty and dark, the Honda's interior light was on, casting a warm glow through the windows. Someone was sitting inside, alone, just watching the building from across the street. The details stuck with him through the rest of the performance, nagging at the back of his mind like a half-remembered melody. During Smells Like Teen Spirit, when the crowd was at its most frenzied, Kurt found his eyes drifting toward the parking lot, toward that small beacon of light in the darkness. After the show, as the venue began its slow transformation from electric chaos to mundane reality, Kurt couldn't shake the image. While his bandmates packed equipment and discussed the next city on their tour, he found himself gravitating toward the venue's front windows, peering out into the night. The Honda was still there, still lit from within, still occupied by a solitary figure who seemed content to sit and watch from a distance. "You okay, man?" Dave asked, following Kurt's gaze. "You've been weird all night." "There's someone out there," Kurt said, pointing toward the car. "They've been sitting there since we started playing. Just sitting." Dave squinted through the glass. "Probably just someone waiting for the crowd to thin out. Some people don't like dealing with the chaos after a show." But Kurt knew it was more than that. Something about the scene felt deliberate, ritualistic even. This wasn't someone avoiding a crowd. This was someone who had come here for a specific purpose that didn't involve entering the building. "I'm going to check it out," Kurt said, grabbing his jacket. "Kurt, come on. You can't just walk up to random cars. That's how you end up on the news as rockstar harasses fan." Kurt was already heading for the door. "I'll be careful. Something's not right about this." The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and approaching winter. The venue sat on a stretch of commercial road that was mostly deserted this time of night. A few streetlights, some closed storefronts, and the Honda Civic sitting under a lamppost like a scene from a noir film. As Kurt approached the car, he could make out more details. The driver was a woman, probably in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a heavy coat and held what looked like a thermos of coffee. A small piece of paper was taped to the inside of her passenger window, not a parking permit or anything official, just a handwritten note. Kurt stopped about 10 feet from the car, suddenly unsure of himself. What was he doing? Dave was right. You couldn't just approach strangers sitting in their cars. But something about the woman's posture, the way she held herself, suggested profound sadness rather than anything threatening. The woman noticed him then, turning slightly in her seat to look at him through the driver's side window. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the distance. Then slowly, she rolled down her window. "You're Kurt Cobain," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Kurt replied, taking a careful step closer. "I saw you sitting out here during the show. I was just... Are you okay? Do you need help with anything?" The woman's smile was complex, grateful, but tinged with a sadness so deep it seemed to have weight. "I'm fine. Thank you for asking, though. That's very kind." Kurt looked at the note taped to her passenger window. From this angle, he could see it was a photograph. A young man in military uniform, maybe 19 or 20 years old. He had kind eyes and a smile that reminded Kurt of his own at that age. "Is that your son?" Kurt asked gently. The woman's hand moved instinctively toward the photograph. "Yes, that's Danny. Daniel James Morrison. He was 22 when this picture was taken." Was. Past tense. Kurt felt his stomach tighten. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "When did he—" "2 years ago. Afghanistan." The woman's voice was steady, but Kurt could hear the effort it took to keep it that way. "Roadside bomb. They said he died instantly, that he didn't suffer. People always say that. whether it's true or not. Kurt felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. 22 years old, barely older than Kurt had been when Nirvana first started gaining attention, a whole life cut short before it had really begun. Jesus, I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine. It's okay, the woman said, though obviously it wasn't. I mean, it's not okay, but you get used to carrying it, the weight of it. After a while, it becomes part of who you are. Kurt looked at the photograph again, then at the woman. Can I ask, why are you sitting out here? I mean, if you wanted to see the show, I could have gotten you tickets. The woman laughed softly. Oh, I've been to your shows. Several of them, actually. This is my 6th one in the past year. 6? Kurt was genuinely surprised. I don't understand. If you're a fan, why sit in your car instead of coming inside? The woman was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands wrapped around the thermos. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Danny loved your music. It was the last thing he listened to before he deployed for his final tour. He had your entire discography on his iPod. Kept it with him everywhere. Said your songs helped him deal with the anger he felt about the world, about the war, about all the things that didn't make sense. Kurt felt something heavy settle in his chest. He'd always known his music connected with people, but hearing about it in this context, tied to someone who died so young, so far from home, made it feel different, more serious, more consequential. The army. Sent me his personal effects, the woman continued. The iPod was damaged in the explosion, but they were able to recover some of the data. The last song he listened to was Something in the Way. They know this because the iPod was still trying to play it when they found it. Kurt closed his eyes. Something in the Way, his song about living under a bridge, about feeling invisible and abandoned. He'd written it during one of the darkest periods of his life, never imagining it would become someone's final soundtrack. So when I heard you were touring, the woman said, I started following the shows. Not inside. I can't handle crowds anymore. Too much noise and chaos. But I park outside and listen. Sometimes I can hear the music through the walls. Sometimes I just sit here and think about Danny, about how excited he would have been to know you were performing so close to home. Kurt opened his eyes and looked at the woman with new understanding. This wasn't random fan behavior. This was a grieving ritual, a way of staying connected to her son through the music he'd loved. What's your name? Kurt asked. Linda. Linda Morrison. Linda, can I ask you something? What was Danny like? Linda's face transformed, the sadness giving way to something warmer, prouder. He was one of those kids who felt everything too deeply. You know the type? He cried when we had to put our dog down when he was 15. He got genuinely angry about injustice in the world. He wanted to fix things, to make them better. Kurt nodded. He did know the type. He'd been the type. That's why he enlisted, Linda continued. After 9/11, he felt like he had to do something. I tried to talk him out of it, told him there were other ways to serve, but he said the world was broken and someone had to try to fix it, even if the fixing was ugly. Kurt thought about all the young people who came to his shows, all the kids who found meaning in his music because they felt like outsiders, like the world didn't understand them. The idea that one of them had died so far from home, carrying Kurt's songs with him, was almost too much to bear. He sounds like he was a good kid, Kurt said. He was, and he would have been mortified if he knew I was out here stalking you. Linda's laugh was wet with unshed tears. He always told me I was too intense about things, but this helps somehow. Sitting here, listening to your music, it's the closest I can get to feeling connected to him. Kurt made a decision. Linda, would you mind if I sat with you for a while? I don't have anywhere I need to be. Linda looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have important things to do." "Nothing more important than this," Kurt said, and he meant it. Linda unlocked the passenger door, and Kurt walked around to get in. The car's interior was warm and smelled like coffee and vanilla air freshener. On the dashboard, Kurt noticed more photographs. Danny. As a child, Danny at high school graduation, Danny in uniform. A whole life documented in snapshots. "Tell me more about him," Kurt said as he settled into the passenger seat. "What did he want to do when he got out of the army?" Linda's face lit up. He wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school, maybe middle school. He said kids that age still believed the world could be good, and he wanted to help them hold on to that belief as long as possible. Kurt felt his throat tighten. Here was a kid who'd understood something fundamental about hope, about protecting innocence, and he'd died before he could act on that understanding. "He was always good with children," Linda continued. "Neighborhood kids would come to him when they had problems. He had this way of listening that made people feel heard, really heard." "He sounds like someone I would have liked," Kurt said. "Oh, he would have been so nervous meeting you." He had this theory that musicians who wrote honest songs were more emotionally intelligent than other people, but also more fragile. He worried about artists he admired, worried about whether they were okay. Kurt laughed, but it came out shaky. "Smart kid. He wasn't wrong." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the now empty venue. The last of the concert-goers had dispersed, and the building looked dark and quiet. "Can I tell you something?" Linda said. "Something that might sound weird." "Of course." "Sometimes, when I'm sitting out here listening to your shows, I pretend Danny is with me. I imagine him in the back seat, singing along to the songs he knew by heart. And for a few minutes, it almost feels real, like he's not really gone." Kurt felt tears prick at his eyes. The image of this woman sitting alone in her car, creating elaborate fantasies just to feel close to her dead son, was heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. "That doesn't sound weird," Kurt said softly. "That sounds like love." Linda wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know it's not healthy. I know I should probably be in therapy, should be finding ways to move on. But I'm not ready. I may never be ready." "There's no timeline for grief," Kurt said. "There's no right way to do it." Danny always said that too. He had this old soul wisdom, like he understood things about life that took most people decades to figure out. Kurt looked at the photograph on the dashboard. This young man who'd loved music and wanted to teach children and had died trying to make the world better. The waste of it, the sheer senseless waste, made Kurt angry in a way he hadn't expected. "Linda," he said, "I know this might sound strange, but would you like me to play something? For Danny?" Linda's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have my guitar in the venue. I could get it, come back out here and play a few songs. Not a concert, just something small. Something for him." Linda's hand went to her chest, as if Kurt's offer had physically moved something inside her. "You would do that?" "I'd be honored to do that." 10 minutes later, Kurt was back with his acoustic guitar, the same one he used for writing and late-night hotel room sessions. Linda had moved to the back seat, making room for him to sit in the passenger seat with the guitar across his lap. "Any requests?" Kurt asked as he tuned the strings. "Something in the way," Linda said without hesitation. "But only if you're comfortable with that. I know it might be difficult, given that it was the last song he heard," Kurt finished. "Yeah, it's difficult, but that's exactly why I should play it." Kurt began the familiar finger-picking pattern, and immediately the car was filled with the gentle, melancholy melody that had become one of his most beloved songs. But playing it here, in this context, it felt different, heavier, more sacred. When he began to sing, his voice was softer than it ever was on stage, stripped of performance and left with only honesty. The lyrics took on new meaning in this setting. The loneliness, the alienation, the feeling of being invisible. These were emotions that Danny had probably carried with him, that all young people carried, that connected the living and the dead in their shared struggle to understand what it meant